Welcome back to Houston Life. KPRC2 has teamed up with the Galveston Bay Estuary Program to spotlight efforts to protect our bays, bayous, and estuaries for future generations.
And today we are taking you out to Trinity Bay near Wallisville. It's just east on I-10 to highlight efforts to collect samples of microplastics. Some particles so small you need a microscope to see them.
So microplastics can range from about 5 millimeters to very, very, very small sizes. And there's a lot of times where you cannot see them with your own eye. So we have to use a very powerful microscope to figure out where they are.
Given their extremely tiny size, how are you able to collect them?
So we use a specialized net that will filter the water out and just catch microplastics and other things that are just floating in the water. And then we have to separate that in the lab, and we end up with all the little microplastics in a little vial.
I understand that even in a small container of water, you've been able to find hundreds, if not thousands, of particles of microplastics. Is that true?
That is correct. Some studies have found that you can find thousands of particles in a small sample, depending on where you're at.
Describe to us the purpose of this work, because I'm not a scientist, but I can understand why having a baseline of what's in our waterways is important. Ultimately, what's your goal in doing this type of research?
So for our particular project in the Galveston Bay watershed, which we're working with the Galveston Bay Estuary Program, we want to establish a baseline of, where are our microplastics and where we can find them. Galveston Bay is a very important watershed, and microplastics have been found in fish, in shellfish, and in other studies, they have found that can have effects in the reproduction or digestive system of microorganisms in the water.
So we know that having microplastics in the waterways is not good for wildlife. It's also not good for us.
We don't know the long-term impacts on human health, and that's not something the USGS kind of focuses on, human health, but there's a growing body of research that is trying to find out what are the impacts of microplastics on people and on the ecosystems. But we need to know where the microplastics are first, so we can continue kind of growing this body of knowledge.
I understand. So you're collecting the information to help provide that baseline of information.
Correct, yeah.
People might wonder, how are microplastics getting into the waterways to begin with?
So there are various pathways for microplastics to get in the water. One of them is just breakdown of bigger plastic particles. So you can see sometimes styrofoam cups on the roads or plastic bottles that are just laying around. As those plastic containers break down, they end up in our waterways and in very, very small sizes.
This region of the United States, this region of Texas, there are so many waterways. There's a lot of water. Vast areas, but you're looking for things that are so tiny. It's kind of like looking for the needle in the haystack, is that right?
It is, but luckily we work with very amazing scientists. Our laboratory where we send our samples is in Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma, and they have developed great methods to be able to separate and look at these microplastics in a very, very efficient way.
Even for someone who is from this area, the waterways are so vast that it's a bit disorienting. You're covering a lot of ground.
We are. We have over 20 locations in the Galveston Bay watershed that we sample at, including like Buffalo Bayou, most people in Houston are familiar with, right? Some of the major watersheds, the Trinity River, the San Jacinto River, but we're also sampling locations within Galveston Bay as well.
But you're being strategic about where you're
We are, and we
samples.
work with the Galveston Bay Estuary Program to determine which locations were important and that we wanted to monitor. So it was a partnership on selecting which locations we wanted to evaluate.
Why did this research begin? Like, how did it all start?
So I became interested in microplastics when I started reading about it. It's just, scientific curiosity. And I realized that there was not a lot of research in our area and in Galveston Bay about microplastics. We didn't know where they were, how many we could find. And I thought that someone had to do that. So we partnered with the Galveston Bay Estuary Program, who's interested in learning and answering the same questions that I had to continue this work with the USGS.
This research takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of patience. What should we expect to see today when we go out with you on the boat?
So we're going to go out on a boat, and the team of USGS scientists is going to deploy this net, and we're just going to skim the surface of the water for a certain amount of time, and then we're going to pull it up and see how much microplastics we collected while we were in there.
And then what's collected today, that will help inform this body of research and body of work that you've really been working on for years.
Yes, about 5 years. Correct.
5 years. It's a long time.
Yeah.
People like you are shaping the world. You and your lovely team here. We're going to see any gators today?
Hopefully.
An alligator.
Yeah, there it is.
Whoa.
There it is.
My first
Yeah.
gator in the wild.
Yeah.
So cool.
You want to put it in, and I'll hold this. Go. All right. So we're getting basic water quality readings to kind of just get a general idea of the water quality properties right now when we're sampling. Temperature 2633, SC 283, DO 5.06, pH 7.35, turbidity 22.45. We're about to pull up, okay?
Okay.
All right, there's stuff in there. So now we're gonna go back to shore and rinse this off and collect whatever material we collected and put it in a jar.
You know, those scientists and researchers, they have such specific calculations. They were using the Pythagorean theorem, which
It's the first time outside of math class that's ever been used.
a long time ago I studied that. But it is fascinating work. If you're wondering, by the way, what happens after these microplastics are collected, they were sent to a research lab at the University of Oklahoma, added to this database, which is growing larger and larger by the day. The research, again, takes years. It's all to gather information and essentially create a baseline of how many and what types of microplastics are in our waterways.
That's fascinating, and we're all affected. This is where we live.
It ends up in the marine life. That marine life often ends up inside of us. So ultimately, this research could be used to figure out what kind of effects it has on the human body and human health, and of course, our environmental health. So by the way, the Galveston Bay Estuary Program works closely with local organizations, all kinds of important initiatives. If you'd like to see the complete list, you can visit gbep.texas.gov.